Hi everybody, welcome back to Leah's Library. Today we're going to read two stories that have to do with gardening. I love gardening. It brings me so much peace and joy. So I hope you're well and healthy out there, and if you are not and you are fighting off something, then I hope that these stories bring you some pleasure. The first story is called Old MacDonald's Had an Apartment House, written by Judi Barrett, illustrated by Ron Barrett. The second is Limu, the Blue Turtle and His Hawaiian Garden, by Limo Armitage, illustrated by Scott Kaneshiro. All right, let's start. You can tell that this book is well loved because it's wrinkled and folded over. I've had it for a long time. And you'll get to see some of my son's coloring techniques as he took it upon himself to color in some of the pictures. So enjoy. Old MacDonald had an apartment house dedicated to all the children everywhere, even those who hate vegetables. Old MacDonald lived in a big apartment house with his wife and their dog. He didn't own the building, Mr. Rental did. But Old MacDonald was its super. A super is an abbreviation or a short word for the word superintendent. Superintendent is the person who takes care of a big building or an apartment building. He polished the brass doorknobs when they got smudgy. He mopped up the hallways when they got dirty and set up steam when it got cold. Old MacDonald's apartment was on the bottom floor, and it was very dark. The windows were covered by a thick hedge that grew in the front yard. Without sunlight, his wife's tomato plant grew pale and droopy. You see that big tall hedge right here? It takes up most of the window. So Old MacDonald decided to cut down the hedge in front of the windows. With all the sunlight that came in, the plant straightened up, grew a few leaves, and even grew a few tomatoes. But the spot where the hedge had been looked very empty, so Old MacDonald's wife suggested that they fill it with her tomato plant. And they did. It grew lots of new leaves and many more tomatoes, and much, much taller. "Why not get rid of the rest of the hedge?" Old MacDonald said. "Then, instead, I could plant vegetables in the yard. They're better looking than the hedge and much better tasting, too." So he cut down the whole hedge down to the ground, and in its place he planted rows of corn and melons and beans and radishes. The fountain became a self-watering pea patch. The front yard had become a small farm, and the tenants were amazed. Look at their faces. Do they look amazed? I don't think so. Old MacDonald sure looks happy, though. One of the tenants, Mrs. Katz, really didn't need 4 rooms anymore. Her children were grown up, so she moved out. It occurred to Old MacDonald's then that an empty apartment would be a good place to grow lots more vegetables. He quickly moved in some soil and proceeded to redecorate in the late vegetarian style. He laid down a carpet of carrots and cabbages, put sweet potatoes where the couch had been, and stuffed the closet full of mushrooms. Some days later, Mrs. Katz's downstairs neighbor, Mr. Hopkins, turned on the faucet and got hot and cold running sweet potato vines. Above his head, he could see carrots popping through the ceiling. He became furious. "Either that garden up there goes or I am," he screamed at Old MacDonald. But Old MacDonald didn't really care. He had begun to feel that in some ways, vegetables made better tenants than people. Carrots didn't smudge brass doorknobs. Cucumbers didn't leave muddy footprints. And potatoes didn't bang on the radiator for more steam. Angry Mr. Hopkins moved out. That's so silly. A variety of vegetables, a field of clover, and a cow moved in. No one knew what Old MacDonald was doing, but you can't keep a cow secret for very long. They must be in the apartment next door, and they hear the cow. What is that? Whoa! More and more people moved out, very disgusted with what was happening. So more and vegetables, fruit, trees, cows, and chickens took their places. Finally, every tenant in the building had moved out. The apartment had become a 4-story farm. Look at him. He's like, bye-bye. Look at this. Pushing some cows in. Cow on the couch. That's so silly. Corn. Peas in the bathroom. Look at that apple tree and the chickens. That is so silly. One day, Mr. Rental, the owner, stopped by to check on the house and collect the rent money, as he did every few months. When he saw that his tenants had been replaced by vegetables, fruit trees, cows, and chickens, he got upset. Very upset. "Look here, Old MacDonald, what have you done?" he shouted. "Where are the families? All that's here now are bushels of fruit and vegetables, herds of cows and flocks of chickens, and they can't pay me rent." Look at, he has apartment 1A, the super. That's where he lives, Old MacDonald. 1B, cows. 1C, tomatoes. 1D, carrots and peas. All the way down, let's see, 3A, beans. 3B, apples and chickens. 3C, cabbage and mushrooms. 3D, mixed vegetables. Excuse me. 3E, more beans. 4A, onions and garlic. 4B, potatoes. 4C, spinach. 4D, pears and plums. Whoa, he looks really mad. Old MacDonald and his wife felt very sad. They knew that they would have to leave. Mr. Rental told them so. In fact, he was going to have the whole farm thrown out onto the street. Old MacDonald told his wife not to cry near her tomato plant because the salt water wasn't good for it. Besides, he said, it set a bad example for the cows. Mr. Rental paced back and forth quickly in front of the house. He was very upset and not really sure that he liked the idea of throwing the farm out onto the street. Old MacDonald had been such a good super. Now, not only was he without tenants, but he'd be without a super, too. Who ever heard of a farm in the middle of the city, he thought. That's absurd. Or is it? Maybe a farm could pay me rent after all. The next morning, Old MacDonald and his wife stepped outside the house carrying their suitcases. In the middle of the front walk, Mr. Rental was building a store. There was a big sign that read, "Rental and MacDonald's, fruit and vegetables. Fresh milk and eggs hourly." Mr. Rental waved at Old MacDonald and shouted, Where are you going, partner? You grow the stuff and I'll sell it. Vegetables will pay me rent after all. On opening day, the store was jammed. Mr. Rental made a very long speech in which he asked everyone to come in very often and to buy as much as they could. He asked old MacDonald to say a few words, and he did. He said, "Dear people, I am happy to have such fine vegetables as tenants. I hope you agree that good vegetables make good neighbors." The people applauded and then began to buy as much as they could. They came back day after day. Both the store and the farm thrived throughout the summer and fall. And even in winter, when the earth outside was frozen and covered with snow, things were still growing on the steam-heated farm. Excuse me. A little bit of dust. There they are, old MacDonald and his wife. All right, our second story, Limu, the blue turtle in his Hawaiian garden. Do you garden where you live? I have a garden. I love to grow my own food and flowers. Turtles! Limu the blue turtle had the most beautiful underwater garden in the entire ocean. It was so beautiful that sea creatures came from faraway places to live there. Limu loved his colorful Hawaiian garden and took very good care of it. Look at all those beautiful sea creatures, crustaceans, manta rays or stingrays. One day, Limu saw his friend Jonah, the humpback whale. "Aloha, Jonah!" he yelled. "Aloha, Limu," replied the whale. "I know you love beautiful things, so I brought you a beautiful seaweed tree from the faraway forest." "Thank you so much. I love it," said Limu. Limu planted the seaweed tree in his underwater garden. It looked beautiful among his other seaweed and coral. The seaweed tree grew and grew. It grew so big that it blocked the sun from the other seaweed trees, and they started to wilt. When there was no more seaweed to eat, the small fishes left. When there were no small fishes, the big fishes had no food, so they left. Soon, there was nothing in Limu's underwater garden except the huge seaweed tree. That is so big. Limu decided to take the seaweed tree back to the faraway forest. Even though this seaweed tree was beautiful, it was not good for his Hawaiian underwater garden. He put the seaweed tree in his mouth and started swimming towards the faraway forest. The tree was very large. It seemed to grow heavier and heavier with each paddle. Soon, Limu became very tired. "If I leave the tree here, it will also destroy this part of the ocean." He knew that he had to continue on, but he was so tired, and it was so awkward to pull the big tree. "You look silly," said a voice from the dark blue water. "What are you doing?" When Limu looked up, he saw a pink turtle. "You're pink," he said. "Yes, I am, and my name is Coral," she said. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I need to take this tree back to the faraway forest. It is too big and blocks the sunlight from the other ocean plants, and they cannot grow," said Limu. "My friends and I will help you move it. If you leave the tree here, it might grow in our gardens and destroy our sea plants," said Coral. Well, that's nice of her to help. "I need your help," Coral called to her friends. As Limu looked into the dark blue waters, he saw an army of 100 jellyfish coming towards him. They wrapped their long tentacles around the seaweed tree and started swimming towards the faraway forest. Many tentacles make light work. That means they're all helping each other, and it makes it a little easier for everybody. Soon they reached a huge forest of seaweed trees. "There must be 1,000,000 seaweed trees. This must be your real home," Limu told the seaweed tree. He replanted the huge tree next to the other trees. "Thank you," said Limu. "Now I have to go home and fix my garden. It's a pretty big job. I'm not sure I'll be able to do it all myself." "I can help you," said Coral. "Everyone needs healthy plants to live." They worked hard to fix the underwater garden. Some of the seaweed and fishes never came back, but some did. Their return made all the difference in the world. Look, fish came back, sea anemones, coral, sea cucumbers. Lots of different animals and plants came back. Limu and Coral settled together and enjoyed their new underwater Hawaiian garden with their children, and each child did their best to help take care of the Hawaiian garden. That would be such a cool place to play. I love all the colors. This is the family. They all have Hawaiian names, and I will do my best to pronounce them. Lipoa, Eleele, Kala, Loloa, Pahapaha, Kohu, Kakanaka, that's it, Kakanaka, Lipoa, Le'ele, Kala, Loloa, Pahapaha, and Kohu. If you live in Hawaii and know how to say these names, I would love for you to comment on the channel and let me know if I'm saying them correctly. The end. Well, there we go. 2 stories about gardening. Old MacDonald on how to have a silly farm in the middle of the city. And Limu, the Hawaiian turtle, and his beautiful underwater garden. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you again next time. I hope you have a really great day. Bye.